Welcome to Tattered Capes, where we explore the best of aging opportunities and the potential they hold for our future in a fun, meaningful, and engaging format.
Even though our capes might be a bit tattered, the superhero in all of us has a lot more resilient living to do. Catherine Owens is the owner of CLO Consulting, a trusted aging well authority and advisor in innovative senior living solutions.
I'm joined by Scott Fulton, longevity expert and owner of Home Ideations, a national leader in living environment design. So we have a really exciting show today, and I don't know about you, Scott, but have you ever had those moments where you meet someone and you know that you were supposed to meet them? So our guest today is one of those people for me, and Dr. Vince Catteruccia. And Vince and I met about a year ago. We were both co-authors on a project, and we were all the authors were coming together for a marketing event. And that whole project, I felt like I was out of place. I could see you shaking your head, Vince, because you and I spoke about that. You felt that as well. And
Absolutely.
But I don't know about you. I've always been told to just show up. Just show up, even if you don't know what's going to happen. And so I showed up and immediately felt even more out of place on this project. So it was an all-day marketing event. And I know, Scott, you're not going to believe this, but I can be shy. So I was feeling quite shy and sat at the back of the room, which again is not typical of me.
This was another Catherine we're talking about, right?
Yes, that was my other personality. Well, number two. But so I'm sitting there and it gets started and I'm thinking, I'm just a loser. I'm sitting in the back of the class all by myself. Nobody's sitting with me. And then the door opened and in walked Dr. Vince.
Yeah.
And I will say that prior, I did do my homework because I knew we would be interviewing other authors. And I was so happy when he walked in because he actually was one of the people that I had done a little bit of research on and wanted to interview. And so lucky for me, he got stuck sitting back in the room with me, and it ended up being one of the most enjoyable days and walking away feeling like he was the reason I was there. We were meant to meet, and really just learned so much from him that day and realized we had similar thought processes. And so excited to have you with us today, Dr. Vince.
Thank you. And I can just quickly elaborate, but you forgot to mention that it was the only seat that was still available in the room. So I didn't have a choice. I had to go sit next to the pretty woman in the corner that I thought isolated herself on purpose. So I was like, well, should I take the seat or shouldn't I? And they just kind of led me to it. And like you said, I think it was very serendipitous. I think it was just I believe in the universe. I believe that we should let go of control, even though that's my instinct, is to hold on tight and try to steer my life. But there we were in a perfect scenario where it was kind of like, all right, I actually didn't know why I was there. My wife signed me up to be there. I didn't know what I was showing up for. And there we were, kind of both of our element. We were surrounded with fitness related people that are more the hoorah kind of individuals that are, creating the trends in fitness. And that's so far away from who I am. It's kind of crazy. So it was great. And here we are, right? We're good friends, we're colleagues, and we're taking the charge and just leading it now.
Absolutely. Well, before we get started on taking the charge, I just want to share with our audience a little bit about you and why I wanted to meet you, what I was so impressed with. So Dr. Vince Catteruccia is...
Just a minute, but Catherine, if I could, for our audience, Catherine, who aren't watching or listening, she has her glasses on. This is a special moment. I didn't want to raise it up, but, go ahead.
Yeah, so we're learning all kinds of things about me. I sit in the back of the room, I can get shy, and I need glasses. Thanks, Scott. And I like to be in control like Dr.
I'm going to pay for that later, I know.
You are. Okay, back to his bio. He is an internationally known musculoskeletal diagnostician, an author who is recognized for uncovering hidden sources of physical pain and producing lasting solutions for his patients without medication or surgery. His natural approach to solving pain is guided by his unique combination of professional credentials, including a Ph.D. in behavior, a Master's of Science in Kinesiology. Okay, Vince, help me. We talked about this today.
Kinesiotherapy.
Kinesiotherapy. See, I'm always learning from you. And a Master's of Science in Human Performance. Dr. Vince is also the founder of Workforce Intelligence, taking his process and programs into companies throughout the United States. He's learned from the best in the world, traveling the globe to uncover natural solutions to nagging pain, including time in Prague at the renowned Model Hospital of Rehabilitation and Manual Medicine. During his 30-year career, Dr. Vince is proud to have helped thousands of people end their battles with chronic pain. Today he lives in, you just had to move.
Yeah, I just moved to Neenah, Wisconsin.
Yes, from Arizona. So that's a whole nother topic.
Big change.
Yes, with his wife, Jennifer, and his son, Gabriel, where he works with patients worldwide, virtually and in person. So with that, I am going to say real quick, I did have the pleasure of meeting Jennifer and your son, Gabe, and that day. And again, just an incredible family and opportunity. So
well, thank you. Thank you. We do what we can, right?
Yes.
What do they call it? Nature and nurture. You got the two. And you can only do so much with nurture, and then nature takes over.
Absolutely.
So, yep.
And that is a really good way to kick off. After you and I had met, I found out about your book, Damned by a Diagnosis.
Yes.
And I was on a business trip listening to the Audible version. Yes, Damned by the Diagnosis. So I'm sitting in first class and I have my headphones on and I'm listening to your book and I'm going, yes, this guy gets it. Yes. And so then I realized people are looking at me, but it was so refreshing. We'll leave it at that. It was so refreshing that there was, I mean, I knew you got it on how you work with patients, and I'll have you talk a little bit about that, but just your approach. And so I want to start out with something that was at the beginning of the book that says, you had said, Mother Nature has a twisted sense of humor. So I'm going to let you elaborate a little bit on that and kick us off.
She sure does. I mean, at the end of the day, we can even go as far as, nutrition and people dieting, not even getting into the pain side of it. People that jump into a diet and they only give it a week or two before they want to start to see results. But I always say Mother Nature and her sixth sense of humor is going to wait to see how convicted you are about that goal. So in other words, how badly do you want it? And it's all about you being dedicated, disciplined, committed to get the end result. Most people want this quick fix, the immediate gratification, right? And there's billions of dollars made in our country every year on the quick fix, the quick offer, the promise of becoming well or healthy. But at the end of the day, the crux of it is, it's about dedication, discipline, organization, commitment. Those are all words that, these are trigger words, right? These are words that when I mention them in a clinic room, if I'm not really careful, I can turn off that person with those words immediately because they're tough words. They mean that the person might have to alter their lifestyle or change some form or fashion of their mindset. That's tough stuff. So we're really careful with those words. So I like to play with, I believe God and his popcorn. I believe God has this big bowl of popcorn and he's sitting in the ottoman watching how you're handling all the different little quirks and idiosyncrasies of life. And then Mother Nature, his strong ally, has a really goofy sense of humor in that she's just going to keep tossing stuff at us and see how we deal with it. And if we have patience. So I try to have a little bit of humor, a little levity in dealing with people with serious life circumstances.
Dr. Vince, do you think that part of this is associated with an absence of a long-term goal or a long-term vision for themselves?
Absolutely. In fact, I think they might start with the idea of a long-term vision or a long-term goal, but they very quickly succumb to the idea of that's too much work. So let's shorten the goal, or let's reduce the vision so that you can accomplish it, but then you're not ultimately getting to where you want to be, right? So I think we all have good intentions at the end of the day, right? But I don't know that we have the gumption or the wherewithal or perseverance to get to it.
Yeah, the analogy I use is the boomerang, right? Like what is it we're actually have in our hand that we're going to work with? Is it a ball or something we're going to throw, or down the mountain or somewhere that's going to keep going, or is it really a boomerang that we didn't commit to and didn't really know what we had in our hands to start with, and we were kind of set up for failure right from the start, not understanding. So they say the yo-yo effect or the boomerang, but often it comes back and then it hurts even more.
Well, and that, to your point, if you've ever thrown a boomerang, a real one, and it comes back at you, if you're not ready for that,
oh yeah,
it hurts.
Oh, that's what as a kid I had one. I don't know where I got it from. Yeah, I learned pretty quickly that was not going to be my favorite toy.
Yeah, and we see that in people that have chronic pain. The reason it became chronic is because, again, they started down a path that they didn't finish. So what they did is they provoked or they exacerbated their issues by not finishing. And it's the same with nutrition. You start that diet, you're really disciplined and dedicated, and then all of a sudden it's too hard. And what do? First thing you do, go buy a big cake and eat the whole thing. And now you gain more weight than you started trying to lose. So that's a great way of looking at it. That boomerang, it hurts when it comes back and hits you if you don't do it the right way.
So I think you mentioned something, change. Change is hard. Change is hard. And I mean, I love the saying, the greater the change, the greater the opportunity. That doesn't always make it easier. But the other thing I think is the awareness and the knowledge that you talk about, the interconnectedness of well-being. And so I think sometimes, and Scott or Dr. Vince pipe in, but we look at one area, maybe diet or exercise. And I just personally went through this last year, realizing there were some other things in my life that I needed to work through that had nothing to do with eating healthy, exercising, all the things that I try and do. And I'm sitting there going, why am I having health issues?
Right.
So can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, absolutely. And Scott, I'm sorry for just jumping in. That's one of my bigger downfalls, by the way, when I do a podcast. You guys can tell me to shut up whenever you want. When it comes to pain or any sort of dysfunction that we might be up against as a human, it's always multifactorial. It's never just one thing. The body's really resilient. Like, we are built to last. And it's all the factors that influence the one issue that we're having that we need to really pay attention to. It's not one thing, it's multifactorial. And in the book, I refer to it as a bucket. Like, it's the bucket of life, your spirituality, your family, your exercise, your nutrition, just your perspective in life. These all factor in to whatever suffering you're going through. So it's definitely interconnected, as you said. And if you go about it in a very single prong or siloed manner, your chance of success aren't super great. As you kind of related to, Catherine, it's, you can get a certain point, but you're not going to get to the whole end goal.
If I, one of the way I put it often is, we would like to pretend that health is binary.
Yes.
Right. We're baited to that. If you just take a pill, or if you just do this one thing, like if you just start walking, for example, right? That's kind of a popular thing right now is, if you just walk every day, it absolutely is helpful. No question.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's never just the walking. It's you use that as an example of, it's the walking now that causes you to add one or two more little things in, that builds success, that now causes you to add one or two more little things. And suddenly the walking becomes not enough. So you start to do a little bit faster walking, or some hills, or some things. You don't have to become a marathoner,
right.
But that's how you build the success, right? And you look back and say, well, the one thing might have been the thing that got me started.
Yes.
But in reality, success is always built on multiple facets, all working together, figuring out the right sequence. Like it's always, and I think the other part too is knowing yourself, or knowing your client, right? Because
right.
we don't all respond the same way. Some of us will do better with, like, I got to do the, like, clean the cupboard out or whatever, clean it all out at once. And yes. Tomorrow morning, like, quitting smoking would be probably the example of which people can relate to. Are you better to cut down from a pack a day to 10 a day, over the course of 6 months, and kind of continually wean yourself off? Or are you the person that, I've tried it, I've got to go cold turkey, and that's the only way it's going to happen. So there's how do you figure when you work with clients? That to me is always, because again, we would all like to know, this is the recipe for success. And the reality is, what's the recipe for you or for me? Yeah. And how do I figure out what's my secret? So you get people started on the right path? Is that part of what you kind of figure out when you're meeting people for the first time?
Absolutely. And I relate all of this back to the book. I wrote the book specifically because these are conversations I'd have over and over and over. And finally it was like, this needs to go between two covers so that I don't have to keep talking about this so much. I can just hand them the book. So there's 3 factors to a successful goal attainment, in my opinion: understand, overcome, pursue. The first part is understand, for both parties. If I'm working with a client, I have to understand their currency. I have to understand their history. I have to understand all the things that worked and all the things that didn't work. Relief positions. I need to know about their family and their support system. I need to know about things that they enjoy as hobbies. So initially, it's this giant information gathering event that gets me and the client to understand each other. So then you open this wonderful line of communication, because you have a kinship that you can build with that person based on how they function mentally, physically, spiritually. Without knowing all these things, and this is, I think, one of the places that the medical system breaks down, there's not enough time spent in that history, in that fact finding. So when a physician in the medical system, American medical system, works with a patient, they have 15 minutes to initially evaluate that person. And it's just like sketching the surface. There's no way how this person functions on a deep level, and you're not going to affect change or cause in 15 minutes. It's just not going to happen. So I explain that to people. I say, look, this is going to take a little time. You need to be patient. You didn't get here overnight, right? We need to understand the path you've been on so that it's a little easier to get you off that path and onto the right one. So it's a bit of a journey. And I'm nothing more than a tour guide when it comes down to it.
I think that the day that you and I met, when we started talking about just our philosophies and our approaches, and again, we came from two different industries, but that right there was one of the things I really appreciated about you and I related to, because to your point, the 15 minutes, it's, well, here's a pill, instead of saying, as you would probably say, and as I say when I'm working with people, how is that impacting your life? How has that changed what it is that gives you joy, or whatever it is, but how is it impacting them? Starts a conversation versus, well, I think this might be that, I'll write you a prescription.
Right. Because it really is. It's spitballing. In 15 minutes, it's really a guess. And if you're really serious about your health or making a change in life, you need to find an ally, a partner, a coach, a consultant that is willing to take the time to understand how you tick, what makes you you, so that the suggestions or recommendations are more precise and they're more guided. So that the way I look at it is the first couple of interactions with a person makes or breaks the long-term relationship. And we can all attest to that. Anybody that you've met in any given day, if you don't spend enough time to get to know that person, the next interaction you have with them is going to be relatively superficial. And that can be okay in regular life and your day-to-day, but when it comes to solving problems like we do on a day-to-day basis, we have to take the time. And that's where I find our system, our medical system, our healthcare system, that's where it actually starts to be broken.
Yeah, I actually had an exchange on this very topic this morning with, online with some coaches, and it's a recognition of, I think, essentially reinforcing what you said. Doctors aren't afforded the time, but they also don't have the education, because it is more than just what they learn in medical school, right?
Oh.
So they have no unique expertise around this, and it requires a much deeper understanding and a broader skill set than a medical doctor is given. So and they're going to be guided by this pill has efficacy for 62% of the patients in a population. So they're going to play the odds to say, well, you've got a better than 50-50 chance this will help you.
Right.
Based on that's what I have to offer. That's my best offering for you. Right. And it is genuinely, it is genuinely the best thing they can give you of what's in their toolbox. Giving you an hour isn't something they have in their toolbox to give you, even if they knew what to do with that hour.
Yeah. And, to your point, I think, generally speaking, a physician, when they leave school, they have every intent of giving the patient the top level care and as much time as they can. But what happens is, it's much like the military. You go into boot camp and they wash you of everything you've learned, and they will re-indoctrinate you with what they want you to know. And so the system, when a medical doctor joins a system coming out of college after their residency, they're up against what the system will permit them to do. And it's in a box, a little box. It's not that they don't want to do more. And it's not that they couldn't do more. It's that they're not allowed to do more.
Right. Yeah, it is. Yeah, they are reprimanded if they go outside the lines very quickly.
Penalized by losing money because they're paid on performance.
Well, and most of them are part of an organization, and they have someone providing oversight who will have one of those difficult conversations with an employee, and the doctor in this case is the employee.
Absolutely.
Being called into their manager's office. It's no different than in any other work setting that we go into. They are rarely the ones at the top of, maybe in a small office, but ultimately they still answer to others, and their liability from an insurance standpoint is clearly has limits of where they can go and where they can't. So, can I ask you a question about pain in kind of specifically now? So you deal with people with pain, and so we've kind of been going around this in terms of the other aspects that contribute to pain and contribute. Particularly, I guess chronic pain is probably primarily a place where you focus on. Can you give us some flavor of what are the sources of pain that people would never perhaps appreciate on their own?
Yeah, I pause because that's a big question, right? So I cheat, and I admit it. I have 3 master's degrees in physical science, physical medicine, and I bridge that with my Ph.D. in behavior. The reason I did that is because your physical being isn't separated from your mental and emotional being. And what I've learned over the course of 30 years of working with people is oftentimes if it's gained a level of chronicity, in other words, if it's lived within you for longer than 3 months, that's chronicity, that's chronic, 3 months plus. Oftentimes you have all these factors that play in. It could be disgruntled spouse. It could be unruly children. It could be the fact that you just plain old simple don't have any faith. It could be the fact that you eat sugar like crazy. It could be that you drink alcohol. Pain is simply an indicator of dysfunction. So there's a couple ways to define it, right? Pain is a response to a noxious stimulus. So like touching a hot flame on a stove, that's a noxious stimulus, and you felt pain. It's also an indicator that there's something wrong in the body, in the system. And if you don't do something about it, it's just going to embed itself and become deeper, and it's going to grow tentacles, and it's going to envelop you as a human. And there's something called a pain cycle that if you don't get it figured out fast enough, it comes back around on itself. And now you're frustrated, you have fear, you have all these different aspects of emotion that are going to start to play into it, that are going to create anxiety and drive the pain even more. And it just gets deeper and deeper. So when I get to see a person that's, for instance, the last person I saw in Arizona has had issues for 2 years. Well, when I hear that in their intake, I'm like, well, we've got quite a journey because we need to back ourselves out of this thing. And there might be many components. And it was funny because this person showed up with her adult son who was 50, and he hovered over her like a helicopter. And so about 20 minutes into the session, I had to dismiss him because she was actually encouraging her response to how she was feeling. And it was a tough discussion. It was a hard discussion because I needed her to break that cord. Because if she didn't break the tether between herself and her son, he was actually a perpetuating factor, reminding her that she felt like crap all the time. How are you, Mom? How are you feeling, Mom? Oh, you can't do it that way, Mom. Well, wait a second. Hold on. We don't need that. So we need to put that in the room next to us and let him run around like a gerbil while we help Mom figure out how to now change her mindset and let go of this little red wagon that she's been carrying full of crap through her life. We just got to unload that little red wagon, right? So, yeah, chronic pain is a bugger, and a person has to be really willing to dress themselves down and let go, be open to change, be open to maybe redefining themselves. Catherine, we just talked about this, right? Because a person in chronic pain is so used to telling a story about how they are. So you walk up to a person and you say, "How are you?" Well, they're waiting for that question, right? Because now they get to tell you how miserable they are. They've defined themselves by that misery. So in order to get them better, you have to get them to adopt a completely different mindset and start to talk about themselves in a more positive manner instead of such a self-deprecating manner.
As you're speaking, Dr. Vince, I'm looking over on my desk and I have a quote. It says, "Whatever I choose to believe becomes true to me."
Yeah. Well, Descartes.
And it's amazing the power of the mind.
Yeah. Well, Descartes, he was a profound philosopher, and you guys will remember this saying, "I think, therefore I am." I mean, it doesn't get any more easy than that, right? But sometimes the simple things are very difficult.
Well, and so that's really the understand piece that
Yes.
you're talking about. And then the overcome
pursue.
or pursue.
Pursue. So, well, yeah, overcome is before pursue. Overcome, once the person embraces the concept that they're really going to have to clean house, then they're going to have to really start thinking differently, treating themselves differently. Maybe they're going to have to pick their friends differently. Maybe they're going to have to move to a different state and just reclaim themselves. Once they figure that out, then you can start to overcome how you feel and how you're waking up every day. And that's the key point or place where a massage therapist, a physical trainer, a counselor, they're going to help you or that person navigate the next bunch of weeks to actually getting better. And I always say the goal is to live the life that you most desire, right? Like put that out in front of you, but you need to clearly define that. Mm-hmm. What is that life? And most people can't answer that question. Most people can't say, this is the life that I desire, because they're so deep in the life that they're living. And so once we get into that overcome stage and they start to heal, we can start talking about what are we going to do to pursue life without all of these negative conversations and all of these bad feelings or pain, or what are you going to do when that's all gone? Now what? Now life is good.
This is the part I really want to dive in, because I think this has so many parallels with the work I do around aging and yes. Really saying, future self, right? I think you touched on it there, and I write about this all the time. It is really hard for us to see ourselves in the future. Now, I think people who work with older adults have the benefit of seeing lots of it around every day, and we can certainly have a strong awareness, conscious or not, of what has worked and what hasn't, because it's something they are continuing to do based on decades of patterns beforehand, right? And so if you can, I would really love to kind of hear your thoughts on that, creating that future vision. And so to kind of give you where I start, just as a reference point, I often, when I teach class with a new class, I'll start on the first class was, let's go to the days and weeks and months prior to your passing, way into the future. And that's actually a point they can imagine, because we've all been to funerals, we kind of been to wakes and gatherings, memorials. We have some sense of what that is. Mm-hmm. And so we can kind of imagine, I would love, whatever that is, but the idea of that's something that is more concrete. It's the space between now and then that's fuzzy. Yes. But it also, what I use it for is to create, if you could create that ideal passing, for people, like, if I could pass in the night pain-free, nobody has to see me suffer. That's kind of, everyone would typically buy into that. So what are we going to do today that will create the opportunity for our best final months, weeks, days? And so give me some thought. And I'm going way down the road with it, but I'm just, but from a tactic standpoint, that's what I have found is surprisingly comfortable for people, not talking about the death aspect, but the life that surrounds it.
Yeah. You mean not everybody wants to die on a mountain bike going downhill like me?
Oh, well, then we have something else in common.
I was going to say, that's not how we related.
I have a mountain right here, and I ride my mountain bike right out my garage up the mountain.
Oh, yeah. That's what I used to do.
About those near-death experiences you've had, Scott.
Yeah. Yep. I no longer have those mountains. Now I live in Wisconsin and it's flat. We're at 0 feet of elevation. It's unbelievable. I don't even know where to ride because everything is flat. Well, anyway, let's get into that. Let's get into that vision of the far future, right? I think in order to do that, though, like I said, you have to really understand where that person is in time and space now, and what their perception of life is now, to understand how small their world is, because it gets super small, right? Like if a person has pain, this can be emotional or physical. Over time, you start to close yourself off from life. You start to eliminate friends that might be too active, or family. You avoid family events because they're just too much to handle. You might not participate in physical activity because it hurts. So your world gets really small. And so what I try to do is I try to figure out how big is that world, and then knowing that in reality, the world's pretty big. The world is your oyster, is what they say, right? Like you can do and be whatever you want. But when a person is chronically in trouble, that thought process changes. It literally becomes stifled, stuck in this bag, and super dark. The light is shut off, right? So until the person actually can have a little bit of hope, and my mentors in Prague, Czechoslovakia, when I was studying there, would always say, Vince, if you can give a person hope, you can help them 30% automatically. So I believe that in order to start to break back into that future vision, the first step is the restoration of hope. Because you could have conversations with someone that literally has zero inclination of hope. Like they can't see past it. They can't see that there's actually an opportunity to become well, or to become happy because there's joy, right? Like, where is it when you have pain? There's no joy. So I have conversations that say, look, it's okay. You can't have light without dark. So it's okay that you're seeing dark. It's okay that you have all these negative thought processes. That's okay. But let's attach those to the opposite, to the positive. Let's attach them. So if you feel like, well, this Christmas, I'm just not going to go to New York because I can't travel. I don't feel good enough to travel. Okay, well, then let's talk about that becoming a goal for the following year. And how do we get there? So now we have a shorter term goal that we can place on the timeline, and you can start to extrapolate from that. So now how are you going to feel if you get to go to New York and you get to see your family? You're going to feel good about that, right? You're going to feel good. You're going to feel accomplished. Yes. All right. Well, with that feeling, what's the next thing that we're going to accomplish? How are we going to get there? What do you want to do? Well, I'd really like to go to Europe. I'd really enjoy taking a trip to Amsterdam. Okay. Well, then we need to figure out, how do we get you there? How does that happen on a mental level? Like, you take them on this journey on a mental level and you start to get them to really believe in it, but it doesn't happen without that spark of hope, and you got to grow that. It just isn't going to happen. I mean, I've been through counseling, and the people listening don't know me well, but I could talk a counselor into a paper bag all day long. And they always want to keep mulling over the past. They want you to keep talking about the past. And somehow you're going to come up with this epiphany that the future is going to be great. Really? Let's not spend so much time looking in the rearview mirror. How about that? How about if we take that sucker right off and we stop looking back? And the only direction you get to look is forward. So now let's start calling it out. What do you see? Where are you headed? What are the little aspects, like a dot to dot, in order to get that person there? And all of a sudden, just like they say, if you lie to yourself enough times, you start to believe it. If you tell the story enough times, you start to believe it, and it starts to become a reality.
Absolutely.
You reminded me, that was another reason that we connected that day, was the word hope.
Hope.
And coming from different backgrounds, and Scott, you have, I'm sure, felt this with people that you work with, but I am in sales, and I hate the word sales because I really work more with people that are having to make difficult change and are experiencing difficult situations. And I've always felt like the moment I see hope in their eyes is when I've done my job.
Absolutely.
And you just made me realize it's because now you can start doing your job, because they have the hope, they have the vision. And it's interesting. I'm listening to you and I'm going, gosh, I needed to hear this today. So I am going to rip that rear view mirror out of my car and go forward. So it's easy to do this with other people. Yeah. And sometimes we forget. But I was just thinking as you're talking, another quote, yes, I like quotes, but is, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so if you want to keep repeating all of those things, and to your point, you do the discovery to even find out what it is that they're saying, the story that they're telling, the things that they're repeating. Yes. But you have to be willing to change, because you can keep running into that wall as long as you want.
Yeah. And we've had that. I can honestly say within a 30-day month, there are 5 or 6 people that I'll sit down with, and they're just not ready for the journey because they're not willing to even accept hope. They're not open enough to even allow it to be a possibility. And if they come in closed, if they come in with a frame of mind that's just embedded, entrenched, this is who I am, but yet I want you to fix me. Well, no, we don't do fixing. It's not an auto body shop. This is a bit of a journey, and it takes work. We have a saying in the mountain bike world, and I quote him in my book. His name is Todd Poquette. I think he just stumbled upon his amazing intelligence and wisdom, but he has a mantra with all the mountain bike kids that he mentors: do hard things, DHT. It's all about doing hard things. Now, if you hear that, most people would be like, that sucks. I don't want to do hard things. What do you mean, do hard things? My job is to do easy things. Like, I want to be comfortable. Well, comfort kills. Sit in a chair for a long enough time, you're going to erode into a pile of putty. You got to do the hard things. You have to be willing to do that. So there's a book written by a guy named Nasir, Anti-Fragile. And it's more of a financially based book, but you can take that knowledge and bring it into real life and just say, if you're anti-fragile, that means that you have the ability to ebb and flow with all of the dynamics of life. But if you think about the human being, in our day and age, we want to become what's called robust, or kind of like bulletproof. Well, that would be like being a pole, a telephone pole in a windstorm. What happens to those? They break. They don't flex. They don't ebb and flow. They break. So if our goal is to have as much money as we can before we retire, and our goals are all set on this amazing amount of robustness or stability, it's really easy to break. It's really easy to become hurt or injured. Whereas if you're like, well, you know what? Money's not my main priority. My main priority is being happy and joyful. And my main priority is to be healthy and well. And you do everything to build an anti-fragile thought process that can ebb and flow. Because I don't know about you guys, but as soon as I figure out a problem in life, there's another one right around the corner. It's just the way it is. I figured that out a little while ago, but here we are again with Mother Nature, her sense of humor, and God and his popcorn. We're never going to get it figured out, and we're always going to have some sort of turmoil. But if our goal is to never have it, you're going to fail. And this is all part of that conversation. What does your future look like? If your expectation is that you're going to have no pain, your health is going to be perfect, your kids are going to be perfect, you are screwed. Plain and simple. You are.
Thanks for the positive.
Yeah.
No, it's Scott, you and I talk about this. I'm going to let you. We talk about, like, a lot of people focus on the length of their life, or that end goal, and not the breadth or the width or the quality, or and it does to I always feel like I write for myself, but because I work with people having to make difficult change, but to your point, Vince, they don't want to because it's easy with the comfortable. I always have two questions. What would you gain by making this change? And so maybe for your clients, it's more pain-free. I can travel. I can go see my kids. I can carry my grandkids. What would you gain by staying in your current situation? More chronic pain, more whatever it is that we're struggling with. So it's not that we don't have the struggles. It's that what you're saying is we get to a point where we can withstand and approach and address and move on to the next one.
And I think for people's success, there have to be reasonable expectations. And I write about that in the book also, right? If a person's goal is to be pain-free, whether that's emotional or physical, and you say to them, well, the path you're on is really smooth, has zero turns, no twists, you can put it in cruise, and you can just keep doing what you're doing, and your end result is going to be the same. It's going to be you today. You're going to end up in the future in the same place. Or I can't promise the other path is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to have rocks. It's going to have hills, might have some water crossings. I'm going to go on that path with you and try to make it as smooth as we can make it, but it's going to be tough. But at the end of that path, you'll be pain-free. Are you willing to take that journey with me? They have to have the reasonable expectation that this isn't going to be easy. And far too often, counselors, therapists, coaches, they talk like, it's going to be a piece of cake. You're going to kill this. You're going to do awesome. It's going to be easy. I'm going to make this road and trip really easy for you. Well, you just set yourself up and the client up for failure, because it's not. And I guess that's the one differentiator with me. And I've been told many times that I'm very black and white. I just don't bullshit with people. I tell them the truth. There's no medication. There's no injection. There's no surgery. It's just hard work and perseverance. And we're going to get there together. But as soon as I feel like you're not showing up and you're not here to make the journey, I'm going to put you back on the other path, pat you on the butt, and tell you to keep going. You're on your own. I'm not going with you.
Yeah, I want to just circle back, because the other option, or that kind of stay on the path you're on, is, again, when studying aging, I'll challenge you a little bit on that, because the future you, and you did allude to this earlier, so I'm not really challenging you. The walls only close in.
Yes.
Right? Over time, you said this earlier, the world gets smaller, and that's why I paid close attention to that, because that's what people forget. That's when I kind of get at this future self. We imagine it, or people, we talk sometimes about how long you want to stay living in your home. Well, for as long as I can. And so it's built around that nothing changes. Mm-hmm. Right? Life never happens to me.
Yeah.
Right. And I imagine these four walls and the world around me is going to be stable. And in reality, it imperceptibly closes in, inch by inch, day by day, relationship by relationship, trip by trip, until we get it so small that the thought of, and I think this is where you go, where you pick people up, their world has shrunk so small that the other side almost looks overwhelming.
Yeah,
like the possibilities are almost overwhelming, right? Which is kind of counterintuitive for those of us who are living what we would describe as, relatively or hopefully entirely pain-free.
Yeah, we all have, I suppose, maybe not all, but I and us, we might have life experiences that open our eyes to this. Like you alluded to in our beginning of our talk, that if you deal with enough people that are aging or aged, you start to really see what our future looks like with the wrong mindset, right?
Absolutely.
So my father passed away 6 years ago. And this was a man that was the head of marketing and advertising for a major newspaper in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Very social, surrounded with people. Heart attack, felt his mortality, went into depression because of that, which happens to a lot of people after a heart attack. His world, you could see, got a lot smaller just from that one life event. And then he healed, and then he started to be really careful about where he was going, who he was working with, because it was too much, it became too much energy almost to actually be surrounded with so much activity. And so had another heart attack 20 years to the day from the one before, and his world got smaller again. That man's last 5 years was as a recluse, 100% by himself, not interested in being involved in any sort of social activity, because he felt like he was a burden to other people because he couldn't keep up. And he didn't want to be the Debbie Downer. He didn't want to be the person that went home early or just couldn't participate. He never really stepped back and realized that, hey, all these people love you, all these people enjoy you, they're going to accommodate, they're going to ebb and flow, and it's going to be okay. But that message was really hard for me to get across to him because I didn't know how to have that conversation. Now that I'm older and I understand it better, and because of the experience with him, and he gave me that wonderful gift, I can really see it happening to somebody, and we can quickly intervene.
Yeah, it's, boy, you nailed it in many ways telling that story. That's beautiful. It's so heartbreaking.
It is.
And that's what, like, for people like Catherine and I, we see this so often, and we feel so helpless, right? Because I think where you get at is there is an element that that the person we're trying to help has to want to change.
Yes.
And in spite of, right, I was with doctors earlier this week at a conference, and there's this piece of we can only work and help those who have a motivation to change. We can't make people do something they don't want to do. And it's really tough. We hope they're going to break out of it, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they never do. So I think part of what I think, you mentioned earlier and Catherine's mentioned, and really for Catherine, that's why we got this podcast going, was one, it was fun, but the other was it's really about hope, because that's really what's missing, I think, from a lot of the conversations today. And I think to your point, it's not just this blind hope. No, it's a belief in certain things that can happen if I understand, like going right back to what you talked about, is where am I today?
Yes.
Right. And be objective. What are some ways of managing that? How can I address the things that are maybe holding me back? And they're hopefully not big things, right? But that push the boundaries, push the comfort zone a little bit. That, as you talked about the mountain biking, some water crossing. I'll tell you a short story here. When I was doing marathons and things, and they talked me into doing a death race. So if you know death races, they're up at mountains, and they do one in Grand Canyon. This wasn't that big, but we went over 3 mountains in this death race.
I just did a 400 miler.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, this is not, so I only did one piece of it. They gave me the big mountain to do, but nice. The training was, I went from running on roads that were nice and paved, and like 5 minutes in, oh, here's this 25-foot stream you're going to have to cross. So you're going to get your shoes wet. Like, I can't run in wet shoes. Not possible. I'm going to get blisters. Well, I had to follow, right? I decided, well, everyone else is going with the flow, so I'll go with it. I didn't get blisters, and it was like, wow, I didn't realize, for all that I thought I was doing this, big training, road racing and things, that as soon as I was faced with another challenge, I was really intimidated. But once I got through it, I realized, I've been shielding myself from life and getting out in nature and taking on some different challenges that were clearly outside my comfort zone. The grizzly bear tracks, fresh tracks were outside my comfort zone without question. But I think you really capture this essence of where hope lies for all of us, regardless of what level. We all have some pain in our lives.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And again, I keep saying it. It's physical or mental, emotional, or it's both physical and mental, emotional. But it's not just an experience with pain as we know it physically. That pain can be very emotional. And we have to get to the crux of that. And I believe the way to do that is with hope. We have to restore it as clinicians, coaches, mentors. When you have a person that's in trouble, that's the first piece of the journey, is the restoration of hope. There's a book for us, Catherine.
Okay, I'm on it. Let me set aside the other 3 books that I keep saying I'm going to write. Yeah. Well, Dr. Vince, this has been great. We're going to need to wrap it up, but just to leave a few thoughts, what would you just say one of the things Scott and I like to do is just some practical tips. And you talked about it, kind of the smaller goals to start with. What are some practical tips that you would leave with our audience to just focus on implementing things that allow them to have better quality of life?
I think first and foremost is to be open. You come in with a closed frame of mind, maybe because you've had experiences with other practitioners or counselors, coaches, and you weren't successful. That doesn't mean you're not going to be successful. It just means that you haven't found that person or that thing to resonate with. So keep searching for that. It's out there. You have to be open to actually make the leaps of faith that you need to make, right? You almost said it. You want easy tips, and I go back to there's nothing really easy, and that's the hardest part for me, right? Is people want these quick and easy tips, and I gotta say, I don't know of any there aren't quick and easy tips. The most important part is to realize that it's not easy, that you have to be able to do and want to do the hard things to get better.
I think that is the easy tip.
That is an easy tip. So I'm going to send back that bracelet I ordered this morning, the miracle bracelet, that within weeks I'm going to need to get a smaller belt. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I did not order it. I was tempted.
I can see you scrolling. I can see you scrolling and looking at them and saying, "Oh, yeah." And then the little voice in your brain goes, "What are you doing? Are you serious?"
Exactly. So that's the easy tip. If it says it's a miracle, it's not.
No, my mentors always used to say, if someone says it's a miracle, you can say it's not a miracle if you know what you're doing.
Yep. Hard work.
Hard work.
Well, thank you. It is just always so much fun talking with you. And
thank you. Been a pleasure.
Timing is always great. So with that, we will wrap it up and wish everyone a great day.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Scott. It was great to meet you. And we'll
Thanks,
see you.
Dr. Vince. This is really helpful. And Catherine, as always, you are connected, girl. You have such great people around you, and I'm just so delightful that you are willing to share them with us all.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
It's the bracelets. Everybody wants a bracelet.
I'm going to check the mail and see if you sent me one.
Oh, definitely. Okay. Have a great day, guys.
Ciao. Thanks so much, Vince. Really appreciate it. That was a lot of fun.
You're welcome.
Really good.
Guys, thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Tattered Capes. To learn more about the show, visit tatteredcapes.com and subscribe on your favorite platform. Until then, stay curious and remember, the superhero in all of us has a lot more resilient living to do. See you on the next show.